All right. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the OCD and Anxiety Show. My name is Matt Cotty, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the creator of the AAA Response. So in this episode, I want to talk about the path to recovery and what that journey looks like. And then really just the fact that it's not a straight line. There's not like this, like, hey, do these 4 steps and then you reach your destination. And really talk about the ups and downs that most people experience. I'm sure there are some like one-off anomaly. Okay, can't say that right now. But one-off cases that, where someone just like wakes up one day and they never experience anxiety again. People like Eckhart Tolle and things like that. And but for most of us, our journey looks a little different than that. I know mine does for sure. So I wanted to just talk into that for a little bit. For those of you who have listened to the show for a while or gain and benefit from the show, we please would ask real quick that if you could support us by liking and subscribing and even leaving a review on iTunes. This just helps the algorithm of the show and helps get us out to more people and helps the search engines and stuff like that. And so if you gain from the show and benefit from the show, we really would appreciate if you'd show your support by just doing those quick tasks, just because it helps us a lot. So when we talk about the journey to recovery, here's what I think most people want it to be like or expect it to be like. And again, our expectations can work for and against us, right? Depending. So a lot of people are experiencing, by the time, usually people are seeking out help, they've been experiencing, intrusive thoughts, high levels of anxiety, panic, right? Just a kind of a barrage of symptoms, and they want to say, hey, I want to go to these many sessions, and then I want to be perfectly back to, where I was before this happened. Is usually kind of the general desire. And again, I'm speaking in very broad generalities here. So it's like, this is kind of what I wanted. This is what most of the people that I work with, want to a certain degree anyway. And what we got to understand about the path to recovery is it's not a straight line, right? A lot of people are like, okay, like I'm at the bottom of the mountain, I need to climb to the top, and they just want to know the shortest path that exists. And someone explained this once, and I don't remember who, so I apologize for not giving the proper credit where it's due, but I believe it was a therapist, and they were explaining that instead of visualizing the idea of walking straight up the mountain, that's not how most people, climb mountains, right? I mean, it just doesn't work like that. Generally what happens is especially if you're talking about like driving up a mountain, they create a road and it kind of goes around the mountain and it goes up in a steady incline, and it goes up to the top. And when we are on this journey, that's kind of how it works, right? It's not that we can take this shortcut approach and just shoot right to the top where we want to get. But what happens is as we start going, we get a little bit further up the mountain. And when you first start, you may not see like you're making a lot of progress. But as you just keep going and keep doing your loops around the mountain, you start to climb higher and higher and higher and higher. And eventually you start to notice when you look back, like, oh man, I'm pretty high up. And you still have a ways to go up, moving up the mountain. But that's kind of how this journey looks for me. And when we talk about that, it's kind of like what happens is that when you're really in it and you're really lost in that lens, there's this period where you have to kind of dig yourself out. And really climb out of that pit that you're in. And that takes time. It just does. It's like, it's like, I wish there was like this magic 3-word process that we could say that all of a sudden is just like, I'm, perfectly, in a blissful state. But from my experience, what happens is essentially it's kind of like we climb up and then maybe we have a little bit of a regression. We climb up, we have a little bit of regression. And as we're climbing out, you can start to remember that, like, hey man, like a month ago I was really in a tough place and today I feel better. And that's why whenever you're comparing and kind of analyzing how you're doing on this journey, it's important to look back and like, okay, how was I yesterday? How was I a week ago? And it's like, and kind of centering yourself in on today, because what happens is as soon as we notice symptoms, we can start to catastrophize and say, okay, well, you know, I'm still having these thoughts, or I'm still feeling anxious. And so it means I'm not getting better. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily, that's usually not the case, right? It's really kind of a gradual incline that takes place for most people on this journey. And then what happens is throughout life, maybe you fall into, you know, pits from time to time. And I know that's been my experience, right? It's like, you know, I'll climb out and things will be going great. And then, you know, some stressors in life will happen and I'll start to get more anxious and, you know, and start to, you know, and kind of fall in. And the goal of recovery is, yes, once we get out of the pit and we're really kind of, you know, more in that collected state of mind, and our parasympathetic nervous system and our bodies are feeling more balanced, what we have been obsessing and anxious about, usually we're able to reappraise that for something is just like a thought, right? And because again, we're able to reappraise it because we're not in the lens. And oh, excuse me, sorry, I sneezed. But when you are, what happens is once you get out, then the aspect is about staying out of the lens. Right? That's what that next part of the recovery process is. And what happens is, what I found is as you get out of the lens more and more, the space between when you get in the lens and out of the lens grows, and the time that you spend in the lens can start to shrink because you start to know what you're experiencing. So when you start getting anxious, you can kind of recognize it right away and start to put the tools in right away. And that decreases the amount of time you spend in that anxiety kind of cycle. And you're able to get yourself out quicker. And that is really what the recovery process is about. It's about you learning the skills so that when this, you know, when stress happens, when your brain starts kind of, you know, wandering and, you know, or just coming up with all the what ifs and, you know, starts and your body starts to get anxious, is like, you know what to do right then and there. And this is why it's so important to become your own healer on this journey. And that's why the path to recovery is really about you doing the work. Because if you put your trust or your well-being, I should say, into someone else as they're your healer, and it's like that, then that person has power over you, right? Because essentially they're the only person who can help you. Anytime I work with someone, right, you know, one of the number one things I say to people is like, you know, at some point I never want to see you again, right? Because it's like, I want you to be out on your own, and I want you to be doing this stuff on your own. I want you to dial these skills in so you have them with you the rest of your life. And that's why it's so important. But when we're talking about the path to recovery, just realizing for yourself that it's not this straight line. There's bumps, there's ups and downs, there's setbacks. It's like all these things are part of the process. They really are. They're part of the journey and part of the growing process. And while you know, there's a piece of me that wishes it was just like, oh, these 4 steps and then you're good. Every bump on the road, every setback, every up and down, that's in many ways, that's a learning opportunity, right? And a growing opportunity. And there's something to take from that experience. And it builds more resilience. It builds mental toughness, right? Fortitude, right? It builds strength. It builds more character on the journey. And if you start to look at your journey from the aspect of, instead of just trying to get to the destination, and as hard as this is to do, right? This is a hard thing to do. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect. And again, like, this is a journey that I'm still on, in the sense of like, yeah, there's always new things coming up in my life. It's not like I always want to be transparent and tell people, it's like, I haven't like reached enlightenment or something like that, right? It's like a thing where there's always new stressors that come up in life, and new challenges, and new things that happen, and new opportunities for growth in all of our lives. And I think the more and more we realize that, the more gentle we're going to be with ourselves. Because the idea that you're supposed to be at the end destination and that's where like eternal bliss lives, that's an illusion. like that's not how this journey works. It's like this journey is really about, from a higher perspective, learning to work with yourself internally, knowing what to do, and not getting caught in this loop. And then as the more and more we do that, yes, healing does take place. And yes, you can reach, amazing states. And yes, like the hope is to prolong those states, but things are going to happen in life. And when they stir up stuff internally, it's your ability to be with yourself and work with yourself and work through those times. And that's why it's not this straight line, right? I will say you can get yourself out of those ruts and those loops. Absolutely. Right. And there's absolutely proven tools to do that. And then when you do that, the idea is just to stay out of the loop. And if you get caught, if you start to go back in, it's like, oh, immediately like put the tools into place so you can get yourself back out. That is part of the recovery process. But then there's deeper levels beyond that about challenging belief structures that you've been carrying, wounds that you've been carrying with you, all that stuff. So there's always work to be done on yourself. And so, hope that helps today. And I just wanted to kind of, share these thoughts on the path to recovery, and that it's just not a straight line, and that's not supposed to be. And just honoring your journey and not trying to rush to the destination is actually paradoxically going to get you there quicker, because you're going to be willing to go through what you need to go through and not be so resistant. So with that said, there's some links down in the notes for some free resources to help you on your journey. Also, if you're looking for help and guidance, over at restoredminds.com, we have various programs to help you. So please check those out, fill out an application, and we can review it and get back to you on what we think would be the best fit for you. Whether it's group or individual or just the self-directed learning program. With that said, I hope you guys have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for watching that video. And so if you're struggling with OCD and anxiety, I just wanted to let you know that we have a free training for you over at Restored Minds, where you can start learning how to use our AAA response to really break out of that loop and ultimately take back control of your life. And all you need to do to access is just click the little link below, and you'll be taken to a page where you can register today. Thank you so much.